grew up around a lot of women in masculine energy, working class northern women who just got on with life, right? I put my mum in that bracket, but most importantly, my school teachers, because they actually spent more time with me than my mum as I was growing up through those really important years, especially around my teenage years, right? But all these women were very strong. I would say they were hard and they were very stoic, and they controlled the room, right? And as a young boy growing up around that energy, I felt powerless. I felt like I was being controlled and told what to do, and I didn't have any wiggle room. And I found that very, very, very difficult to handle, right? Very, very difficult to handle. Recording in progress. You are not broken because you get triggered. You're not weak because your partner puts you on edge. And your relationship problems, they're not about who's right or wrong. They're about whose nervous system is in charge. Hello, everybody. My name is Davy. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone who lives a self-led life, alcohol-free as fuck. And I spend every single waking moment of that life helping other people do the same. Like right now. How are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Where's my cup of tea? Here you go. Can't do a podcast without my cup of tea. British, see? Cup of tea, lots of pee. Today, we're not going to talk about tea. We're not going to talk about pee. We are going to talk about co-regulation, right? I want to talk about why you feel safe or unsafe in your closest relationships. And let's talk about how alcohol is not the problem, but the escape route when you really don't know what else to do, right? For me personally, I find relationships the most difficult, complex, hardest thing I've ever tried to do in my life, right? And there are moments I find being in relationships, the actual navigation of the closeness, the intimacy, the conflict, almost unbearable. And it's not because of the other person, but because of what gets activated in me, my triggers, what lights up my nervous system, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit today about an incident that happened with my beautiful, beautiful wife, Liza, right? To serve as an example of how nervous systems and co-regulation come into the picture when you're in a relationship. So I think my wife is amazing. I think she's incredible. And I really feel safe and I love it when she is in her free-flowing feminine, right? Because she has that warm, soft, nurturing, funny, humorous. If you take polyvagal theory as an example, her face just looks really nice and welcoming. Her tone is beautiful. I love it, right? But when she's in her masculine energy, not so much. When she is decisive, when she is direct, when she is focused, I feel really unsafe, right? There's a part of me that feels really unsafe. Not because she's wrong, but because of my history and my belief, this perception I have around control. You see, I grew up in the 70s and 80s around women who spent a lot of time in their masculine energy because their men were never in their masculine energy, right? So they had to get out of their feminine into the masculine because they had a household to run of 1 million kids with no money, and their husband was away somewhere in the pub or doing whatever he was doing, right? So I grew up around a lot of women in masculine energy, working class northern women who just got on with life, right? I put my mum in that bracket, but most importantly, my school teachers, because they actually spent more time with me than my mum as I was growing up through those really important years, especially around my teenage years, right? And all these women were very strong. I would say they were hard and they were very stoic and they controlled the room, right? And as a young boy growing up around that energy, I felt powerless. I felt like I was being controlled and told what to do, and I didn't have any wiggle room. And I found that very, very, very difficult to handle, right? Very, very difficult to handle. So when I sensed that energy in Liza, that little boy, you found it really difficult to handle when he was a youngster, it lights up in me, it wakes up, and it puts my nervous system into sympathetic nervous system mode. Not, it's like fight or flight, right? There's no flight about me, it's all fight. So when I feel controlled and I feel boxed in, even without realizing, I go on the offensive, right? I become really defensive. I become sharp. I become impatient, edgy, angry. I try to lose my voice. to dominate people. I try to use my intellect to dominate people. But here's the thing. When I flip into that masculine energy, right, that immature masculine energy, Liza senses that as well. And her nervous system responds. Now, suddenly, we are two people in our masculine polarity. We have both vacated our feminine poles. And if you know anything about magnetism, you get two magnets, right? When we are both in our masculine energy, there's just repulsion. There's no magnetism. It's two north poles pushing against each other, right? And when this happened, the story that I used to tell myself, and I really believed this, was if Liza just stayed in a feminine, our relationship would be amazing, right? If only she would change, our relationship would be easier. But that's just complete bullshit, right? And we're going to go on a little break while you smell that bullshit. And here's an invitation for you to pause the recording and ask yourself a couple of questions, right? Where do you lay the blame in your relationships that might actually be a reflection of your nervous system? Okay. And what happens, or what will happen, if you take responsibility for the way you show up, if you take 100% responsibility for the way you show up in your relationships, what will happen, do you think? Have a think about that, and we'll get back to you at the end of the break. Welcome back to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. We are today talking about co-regulation of nervous systems and how it is the most complicated dance that there is in humanity, in my opinion, right? Back to my beautiful, beautiful wife. Have I told you, by the way, that my wife is beautiful? Just in case she's listening to this, she's beautiful. She's amazing. She also has sciatica, and it's been a living fucking nightmare, right? And a couple of days ago, actually, it wasn't a couple of days, a week ago, I went into the room to give her a massage, right? I was actually giving her some spinal flow, giving her some massage. And halfway through, she said to me, let's stop, right? Let's stop. You're not really here. You're not present. And I got really defensive. I was like, no, I am present, right? Like I am present. But as usual, she was right and I was wrong. On reflection, I definitely was in scarcity energy. I was rushing around. I felt stretched. You know, that quote in The Hobbit where he says, I felt like margarine or butter stretched too thinly over a piece of toast. I definitely was like that, you know? I definitely was in my masculine energy. I wasn't present for her. She was perfectly right. And she wasn't rejecting me. She was rejecting my energy. You know what I mean? And when I realized, when I see, what I realized actually as a result of this is when I see Liza in her masculine energy and I get triggered, the reason I'm getting triggered is I'm actually seeing myself. It's not just about all the other women that went before, the school teachers and my mom. I'm not just seeing them. I'm actually seeing my own behavior that I find abhorrent within myself, within her. It's a mirror. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to lead. I take great pride. I take great pride in being the bastion in our relationship. You know, I would say that Liza is the bastion in how to raise Zia and spending time with Zia. I would say I'm the bastion in leading our relationship, right? And I take a great pride in that. It's a great opportunity in this moment, I'm thinking, to stop trying to regulate her and start regulating me. You know, I live with two women, right? Liza and Zia, a woman and a young girl, right? And their nervous systems co-regulate with mine. And as a leader of this family, of the man of the family, I need to be aware of that, right? Like if I'm anxious, if I'm edgy, if I'm triggered, they're going to feel it. They might not say it, but their systems will adapt. So my work every day is to check in with myself. Every 2 hours, phone goes off and I ask myself, am I above the line in self energy or am I below the line in parts? Do I have access to my higher self or am I mired in victim consciousness? Am I in my healthy masculine or healthy feminine? Or am I wounded, urgent, frantic, resentful in the immature masculine and the immature feminine? Am I leading with openness or control? Or am I closed and in victim consciousness? Because when I shift my energy, the whole house shifts. Can you see how different that is than wanting other people to shift? Because now I have a resemblance of control. And as I've explained to you, control is an issue of mine because it makes me feel unsafe, right? And this is where it ties into alcohol. Most people think that when they become alcohol free as fuck, their relationships will get better. My story is a good example of that, right? The catalyst to becoming alcohol free as fuck was a marriage falling apart. And I really believed that if I stopped drinking, I would save my marriage. And it didn't happen. It ended up in divorce. And the reason is life is not that simple. When you stop drinking, you do gain access to self. You do. And from there, you can heal your relationships. But you've got to be ready and you've got to be willing to do that work. And what I'm saying is, it's really hard and it takes a big commitment from both sides of the tennis court of the relationship of life, if you like, right? But it's good stuff out there because as your relationships feel safer, you do feel more connected. And when you feel more connected, you don't need alcohol as much, right? People don't drink alcohol because they're weak. They drink because their nervous systems are dysregulated. And the liquid lie has sold them the illusion that the only way to soothe those nervous systems is by drinking alcohol. And this is why alcohol becomes the crutch. But it's a false solution, right? It numbs you just long enough to ignore the inner work, to ignore the vulnerability of taking responsibility and saying, well, actually, I'm blaming everybody else in this household because of their nervous system, but I need to just focus on my own. Okay? I need to focus on my own. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, today's vow. Today I will not drink. Today I will lead my home by leading my nervous system. I will meet others not with blame, but with presence. Every relationship is a dance between nervous systems. If you want the music to change, don't wait for the other person to start moving differently. Be the one who sets the rhythm with your energy, your presence, and your self. A few questions to reflect on. Please share them with me if you want to. Where in your life are you waiting for someone else to change before you feel safe? Who are you blaming around your lack of safety? What is your go-to part when your nervous system gets activated? Who shows up? What part of your personality emerges when you get activated, when you get triggered? What does your nervous system need to feel safe right now? What does it need? Okay. Share your thoughts with me on socials, in the comments, or send me a DM. I want to hear about it. Okay. So that's all I've got time for you today. If this episode helped you see your relationship or your drinking through a new lens, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If anybody you know is in a relationship, I'm sure they do. Rate and review the show so you reach more people who are stuck in their parts, stuck in their reactivity. Subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And if you're ready to start living a self-led life, work on your relationships at a much deeper level and work on your nervous system and becoming the greatest human being that you can be, get to www.thisdrivemethod.com and get on board our 6-month flagship program where we help you become alcohol-free as fuck and live a self-led life. Until tomorrow, remember, you have more agency than you believe. You have more power. The nervous system is yours. Yes, biology is king, but you can do things to recognize where you are and bring yourself into this state of homeostasis, social engagement, this beautiful self-energy. And from that place, you do not need to drink alcohol today. All right. Much love. Until tomorrow. Strive on.